Well, hello there. How's it going? Haven't seen you guys for a whole year. Am I allowed to say that?
Everyone immediately leaves stream.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't blame you guys. I probably would too. So, um, yeah, good to see all of you guys. I'm here, as usual, and who else is here with me?
Dietrich's here.
Dietrich's here. You want to introduce yourself? Tell you, it's been a couple weeks. Say what's been going on.
I am at home, and I am gonna take the rest of my college online, and I will be done. I have 2 classes, so
That's what we like to see. Also,
less college is always better than more college.
oh yeah, absolutely. Well, as you guys can see, I've got a different background here. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? I'm on a trip right now. So I'm not at home or at school. I am in Utah currently, and that's for what this background is. This room might be even more echoey than my room in my parents' house. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, you know, I have the couple weeks off here between the fall semester and the spring semester, and I went back home and I wanted to spend some time out here, and that's where we are. But I don't want to get that in the way of doing what we normally do. So I guess that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get back to it. Also, why can I not see chat? That's slightly aggravating. What's going on there? I don't know why Twitch won't let me see chat. That's interesting. What's going on there? Oh, there we go. Now it's... no, it's still not working. Now is it working?
Do you want me to send something?
Maybe. Just to see. Okay, now I can see it. I don't know why I couldn't see it before, but now I can see it. But we'll give a couple minutes while we wait for everybody to stop in, as we normally do. We got Exodus 13 to 15 tonight, so that'll be really fun. It's a little longer, not too long though. Might be a short and sweet one tonight, even though it's a longer passage. But how are you guys all doing? How was your Christmas? How was your New Year? How was all of that stuff? I want to hear. So for me, I was all over the place. So immediately as soon as the fall semester ended, so the fall semester ended on, what was it? The 15th. So immediately after the semester ended, I drove back to Pennsylvania to be with my family and friends. But it wasn't leisure time, it was working on charity time. So that charity, which by the way, if you guys haven't seen, I put a video on the YouTube. I can link it actually for any of you guys who haven't seen it yet. I uploaded a video that recaps the whole event, the whole charity thing that we did. So I'll link it here. So if you guys want to get a recap of the charity and how it went, and all the people that we helped and how much money was raised and all of that stuff, you can go watch that. A lot of that was provided by you guys. A lot of that charity was funded by all of the donations that you guys gave us. So we just want to thank you guys for all the help that you guys gave for that charity. It went extremely well, extremely well. And the least that we can do in return is little things like make this video for you guys, and plant some trees in Minecraft in your name and stuff like that. And I'll be the first to announce here at the beginning of this stream that we're going to do the same thing throughout this year. So all the donations and subscriptions and everything from this year will go towards this charity for this Christmas. So starting off strong, got 12 months of donations and subscriptions and all that to go towards this charity. So I'll just announce that right away for you guys. But yeah, if you want a recap of how it went, feel free to watch that video out. Thank you guys for helping out with the charity and all the help that you guys gave for that. But that's to say, going back to my Christmas. So went back home on the 15th. My last final was, it was a final exam for philosophy of the Christian religion. I had it at 9 a.m. and it was a 3-hour exam. And as soon as that was over, I grabbed lunch to go, packed up all my stuff, went home, and then the very next morning, we were collecting all of the goods and putting them in one place to sort them and everything like that. Because if you guys don't know, on top of the money that you guys gave for the donations, we also took, we asked for donations from, our local churches and workplaces and whatnot. So they had donated stuff as well. So we were collecting all the items that were donated and we sorted them, listed them all out, and then we used the money that you guys donated to buy all of the stuff that was missing that we still needed for the project. Um, but that was the whole next week, all from the 16th all the way up until the 23rd, because December 23rd was actually the day that we went downtown to pass everything out, which went extremely well. Passed out almost everything, which was amazing. We just had some clothes that were left over. Um, and then obviously the 24th was Christmas Eve, spent that with my family. The 25th was Christmas Day, spent that with my family. And then as soon as the 26th rolled around, I drove back to school to be with some friends and my girlfriend down there. And then immediately I came back up to Pennsylvania to be with my family again on the 28th. And then celebrated the new year. And now I'm in Utah. So I've been all over the place. But I'm ready to get back to it. We had a couple weeks off from the stream. So now that we've had a couple weeks off of the stream, I'm ready to get back to it and to have a good time with you guys. So, but yeah, while we're waiting for a couple more people to stop in, you guys have anything notable that happened over Christmas? Anything that you guys had that went on particularly exciting? Any traveling that you guys did? Anything that you guys got gifted for Christmas from a family member or a friend or anything? Anything that's notable? I know there were quite a few interesting things that went around. So Nate's been sick the whole break. Oh my gosh, are you serious? Nate, oh my gosh. Are you still sick? I'm sorry to hear that, man. I am very sorry to hear that. Oh man, dude, that sucks. Well, hey, we'll be praying for you. Hopefully things get better. It sucks that you were sick over the holidays, but hopefully things get better. I mean, the new year just started, so hopefully that you're all rested and ready and renewed for going back to work and everything else that's coming up in the new year. Hopefully, the same goes for everybody here. Hopefully everybody here has had, you know, a restful break and can be ready to get back to whatever this year has to throw at them, school or work or whatever it is. Gosh, I need that for myself. I'm not exempt from needing that rest before getting back to school and work and whatnot. So, but yeah, seems like quite a few people have come in. We'll wait a couple more minutes before getting started, just in case anybody wants to seep in. I know we're a little bit later tonight than normal. There's a reason for that. I'll talk about that at the end of stream. Um, if I talk about it now, it might derail everything going on tonight. But whenever we get to our prayer requests at the end of the night, I'm going to add a prayer request to that list. Something came up pretty drastic that will definitely need some prayer that we'll go over at the end. Nothing too horrible, but definitely not great. So, but yeah, we'll talk about that at the end of stream. Just wanted to explain why, a little bit late tonight. But yeah, so I guess I'm going to pray us in, and then I'll explain how the Bible study is going to go as usual, and we'll get into it. So if you'll join me in prayer real quick. Father in heaven, thank you so much for today. Thank you so much for a new year. A new year to be able to learn about you, to pursue the callings that you have called us to, new year to grow closer to you and to build a deeper relationship with you. We pray that as we start this new year, we will be refreshed and rested and ready to take on whatever it is that you have in store for us this year, whatever that may be. Whether it's a calling that we're already pursuing in our lives, or whether you're calling us to something new. We pray that we would be open, with open hearts and minds, ready to receive whatever it is that you want to tell us and wherever you want to lead us. And we pray that whatever it is that you call us to do this year, that you would be with us every step of the way, that you would comfort us and provide for us and show us the things that are right for us. We pray for this Bible study tonight, that you would meet us here in this conversation, that you would speak through me and through my friends and through everybody here in this stream, that all of us might say things that are glorifying and honoring unto your name, and that we might be able to all learn something new tonight and to grow closer to you. I pray that this would be a place where your kingdom is furthered here on this earth. We pray all of these things in your name. Amen. So, let me swap over here. So, let me go over how we do these Bible studies. If you're new here and you haven't been a part of one of these Bible studies before, here's how we do things around here. So, we're going to read through our text, which this week we're going to be doing Exodus chapter 13, verse 17, starting right here. And we're going to be going all the way down. Let me scroll through everything. I'm going to be going all the way to chapter 15, verse 21. Most of chapter 15 we're just going to read at the very end, but that's what we're going to be going over today. So how are we going to do this Bible study? Let me scroll back up to the top. First thing that we're going to do is we're just going to read through the scripture passage at face value. We're going to let God speak to us through his word before we have any conversation ourselves. So we're just going to read through the scripture the whole way through and let God speak to us. And then after we've read through the first time, we're going to take some time to, take comments and questions and concerns and just chat about it for a little bit. So this isn't essentially a sermon where I'm preaching down to you guys. We call this a Bible study. And the reason we call this a Bible study is because it's a conversation between me and you guys and everybody here, so that we all might be able to speak and input into the conversation and add comments and ask questions and do whatever it is that we think would be most pertinent to the conversation. After that, we're going to spend a little bit of time researching what other people have had to say about this passage. And then we're going to end in a time of prayer, going over the prayer requests that we have in our community. So we're going to start off by reading through the passage, like I was just saying. If you want to read along with us, feel free. Like I said, we're going to be starting in Exodus chapter 13, verse 17. I'm going to be reading in the NRSV English version, but if you have a different version that you would rather read from, I actually encourage you to do so. Because obviously, there is no perfect English translation of the Bible, because translation is very tricky and it's an art, and there's no perfect way to translate anything. And if you have a different English translation that you would rather read from, I would encourage that, because then that might come up with some interesting pieces of discussion that we can go over. In a sense, why is this translated this way in one version and this way in a different version? What's the reason for that, right? And we can discuss the importance of that and what that means. Or if English is not your native tongue, I'd encourage you to read this in your own native tongue, so that it might be easier to understand, and that maybe you might be able to understand what's going on a little bit better. But if not, like I said, I'll have it up here on my screen here if you want to read along with me. So I'll start here in chapter 13, verse 17, and I'm going to read all the way till the end. So if you'll read along with me. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, although that was nearer, for God thought, if the people face war, they may change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people by the roundabout way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of the land of Egypt prepared for battle, and Moses took with him the bones of Joseph, who had required a solemn hymn of the Israelites, saying, God will surely take notice of you, and then you must carry my bones with you from here. They set out from Succoth and camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. The Lord went in front of them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them along the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them lights that they might travel by day and by night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites to turn back and camp in front of Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, in front of Baal-zephon. You shall camp opposite it, by the sea. Pharaoh will say of the Israelites, 'They are wandering aimlessly in the land. The wilderness is closed in on them.' I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them, so that I will gain glory for myself over Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord." And they did so. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the minds of Pharaoh and his officials were changed toward the people, and they said, "What have we done letting Israel leave our service?" So he had his chariot made ready, and took his army with him. He took 600 he took 600 picked chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt with officers over all of them. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the Israelites, who were going out boldly. The Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, his chariot drivers and his army. They overtook them camped by the sea, by Pi-hahiroth, in front of Baal-zephon. As Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites looked back, and there were the Egyptians advancing on them. In great fear, the Israelites cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us, bringing us out of Egypt? Is this not the very thing we told you in Egypt? Let us alone, and let us serve the Egyptians. For it would be better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." But Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid, stand firm, and see the deliverance that the Lord will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today you shall never see again. The Lord will fight you, the Lord will fight for you, and you have only to keep still." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward, but you lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, that the Israelites may go into the sea on dry ground. Then I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, that they will go in after them. And so I will gain glory for myself over Pharaoh and all his army, his chariots and his chariot drivers, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gained glory for myself over Pharaoh, his chariots and his chariot drivers." The angel of God who was going before the Israelite army moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from in front of them and took its place behind them. It came between the army of Egypt and the army of Israel, and so the cloud was there with the darkness, and it lit up the night. One did not come near the other all night. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. The Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night, and turned the sea into dry land, and the waters were divided. The Israelites went into the sea on dry ground, the waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued and went into the sea after them, all of Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and chariot drivers. At the morning watch, the Lord in the pillar of fire and cloud looked down upon the Egyptian army and threw the Egyptian army into panic. He clogged their chariot wheels so that they turned with difficulty. The Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the Israelites, for the Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the water may come back upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots and chariot drivers." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at dawn the sea returned to its normal depths. As the Egyptians fled before it, the Lord tossed the Egyptians into the sea. The water returned and covered the chariots and the chariot drivers. The entire army of Pharaoh that had followed them into the sea, not one of them remained. But the Israelites walked on dry ground through the sea, the waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Israel saw the great work that the Lord did against the Egyptians. So the people feared the Lord, and believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. So that is the end of chapter 13 and all of chapter 14. I'm going to save chapter 15 for now. You'll see why. But we'll go over these chapters first, and then we will come back to chapter 15 after we've gone over these a little bit more. But before we go any further, does anyone have any questions that came up while we were reading through this? Anyone have any comments that they want to make regarding the passage? any concerns, anything that worries you about what has been said, anything that you want to have more clarification about. Or while we were reading through, was there anything that came up in your translation that seemed a little odd compared to what I had in mind, or vice versa? So, one of the things that I feel like I always forget about this passage, and I feel like a lot of people forget about this, um, is this little section right here. And I want to go over this a little bit more. I actually have a scene that I want to show you guys. Um, when we talk about this passage, we always remember, I feel like, the beginning part of the passage and the end part of the passage, but we don't really remember what happens in the middle. We're so focused on the Israelites' unfaithfulness to God in wanting to go back to Egypt. We have so many sermons prepared around that specific topic, and we have all this focus on how the Israelites should have had more faith in God. And then on the flip side, we talk about the end of the passage where God delivers the Israelites at the very end. But we forget this middle part where it's just God, the Israelites, and Pharaoh's army. And they're all just here for a little bit of time. And there has to be like an extreme tension there. Like, as it says here, Pharaoh and his army are here. And it is only because the angel of God moves the pillar of fire in between the Israelites and Pharaoh's army that Pharaoh's army cannot reach them for a time being. Like, there is a time period where the Israelites are just sitting there in terror of what will happen when Pharaoh and his army can reach them. They can see Pharaoh's army, and Pharaoh's army can see them, and they just can't reach each other. And there's just moment of waiting for what's going to happen. And I feel like we never talk about that. Like, whenever we picture this event, we just picture like, oh, Pharaoh's army's coming. What's the quick reaction? Moses raises his rod and the sea splits and they just run across. But it's not that quick, right? It's not that quick. And there's a really fantastic scene from a movie I want to show you guys that I think pictures this really well. Whenever so I was actually, in my undergrad, I was taking a Pentateuch class, which if you don't know what the Pentateuch is the first 5 books of the Bible, what we're going over right now. So it's Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. So essentially the 5 books of Moses. And I took a class on these 5 books in my undergrad, and the professor of the class was a very brilliant mind, and she, oh gosh, Caserite, thank you so much, man. How are you doing tonight? Hopefully I said your name right. I'm not sure if I did or not. I'm going with Caserite. Tell me if I got that wrong, or if there's something else I should call you. Maybe you have something else you want to go by. But thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for the follow. I'm glad that you've been blessed enough by this conversation to follow us tonight. Hopefully your new year is going well. But yeah, thanks for coming here. You can let me know if there's something else you'd rather me call you. We just started a little bit ago, so we just read through our passage. We're doing Exodus 13, verse 17, I believe, all the way through the end of chapter 15. So we got a little bit of a section here. It's essentially the Red Sea being parted for the Israelites as Pharaoh's army chases them, is the scene that we're talking about today. But yeah, so whenever we come, I guess, since we're just getting our comments and questions out of the way right away, I wanted to make a comment on that, because I feel like every time I read through this passage again, I forget about this part of the passage. Because we've just had it so ingrained in our minds that this scene happens in a particular way and it's all rushed and all this stuff, when in reality it really wasn't. And every time I read it, I'm reminded of like, oh yeah, like this is a little different than we remember. And like I said, there's a movie scene from a movie that I think it does a particularly good job of showing what is actually happening here in this scene. Um, and that's what I was talking about just a second ago with my professor from my undergrad. She showed us this movie, and she made comments about that afterwards, about how loyal this movie was to the source material, how close it was to the actual events, and how well it portrayed them. And especially in this particular scene, I think it does a very good job. And it's from, in my opinion, a very good movie overall. Obviously, I won't. I guess I'll say what the movie is. It's called The Prince of Egypt. Um, it's an animated DreamWorks film from the 90s. Believe it or not, DreamWorks made biblically inspired films back in the day. They made a Joseph film as well. Um, and they're not just like cheap children's remakes. Like they're actually really, really well done movies. If you haven't seen Prince of Egypt, I highly recommend you see it. Obviously, it takes some creative liberties that you'll have to, know are there, but the creative liberties it takes aren't unbiblical. It's more like Hebrew Midrash, which, if you don't know, Hebrew Midrash is, it's an ancient Jewish custom where the Jewish rabbis come together to talk about a piece of scripture by bringing in interpretations to the scripture that aren't explicitly in scripture but could have been likely. So there's, you know, whole scrolls, whole documents written on Hebrew Midrash, and essentially like what Jewish rabbis think could have possibly happened in many of these occurrences, but it's not necessarily biblically 100% true. It's just what they think could have happened. Kind of similar to what they do in the movie with some of the creative liberties they take. Um, but yeah, so I guess we can start here at the top and go through sentence by sentence and try and explain some things. So back here where we started, 13 verse 17, starts off, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines. So I'm not sure if the Philistines have been mentioned yet. And if they have, we haven't talked about them. The Philistines are going to be they're going to be a major group in later portions of the Old Testament. They're not so much of a threat now. At this point in time in history, Egypt is still the ruling power, not just over the land of Egypt, but over kind of the entire land of Canaan. So if I can pull up that map again. So you can't really see like lines on this map, but like, so for example, let's scroll out, right? This is Greece and Italy and Turkey, modern day. And this would be modern day Egypt and ancient day Egypt. So, ancient day Egypt is the same as modern day Egypt for the most part. So this would be Egypt here in the Nile River. Um, at this point in time, Egypt was kind of an empire. They were ruling most of this whole region. So this was their land, but they also had vassal states all the way up here in Canaan. So like Jericho, for instance, is way up here in the land of Israel, right? I don't know if it'll show up on this map specifically. Yeah, here's Jericho, right? This is way in the heartland of modern day Israel. Um, but Jericho was actually a vassal state of Egypt, right? So whenever we get past Moses' death, whenever Joshua is coming in with the Israelites to conquer this land, to make it into the land of Israel, right? Because that's whenever the nation of Israel really starts to become a thing, is whenever Joshua and the Israelites come in to conquer it. The big thing is that a lot of these cities that they were conquering were actually vassal states of Egypt. So in a way, all of these years later, the Israelites are still overcoming Egypt's oppression, which is something that the ancient Israelite would have understood whenever reading these texts, but we miss today because we don't have that cultural insight. So that's just an interesting thing to keep in mind. But that being said, the Philistines are going to be a later power. So right now, we are in the early Bronze Age, historically speaking. The early Bronze Age gosh, I don't know if I have too much time to go over that right now, but there's like the Bronze Ages, early, middle, and late, and then oh sorry, I meant to say late Bronze Age, not early Bronze. We're in the late Bronze Age. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. And then we have the Iron Ages 1, 2, and 3, and so on and so forth. We're still in the late Bronze Age, and throughout the late Bronze Age, Egypt is the ruling empire. Um, but there's a late Bronze Age collapse where a lot of civilization is kind of overturned. And in this flip, Egypt loses a lot of its power over a lot of this land, and one of the ruling forces in the land of Canaan will become the Philistines. Um, so the Philistines, they came from up here, most likely. We believe that they came from up here, up north, um, potentially in this region. It's not confirmed. They could have been from, like, this is modern day Turkey, this is modern day Greece. They could have come from anywhere up here in Turkey or Greece. We just know that they came somewhere up here from the north because ancient cultural documents refer to the Philistines as sea peoples, meaning that they actually came up here from the north and sailed down through here to get into the land of Canaan. Later on, some of their armies would have come and walked across here, but early settlers of the Philistines would have come from the sea. But that's to say, the Philistines were new to the region. They're not going to be a ruling power yet, but the Philistines were a conquering people. The Philistines, as we will see in later books, are a major threat to Israel, right? The Philistines are going to be the group of people that Samson fights in the book of Judges. They would have been, the Philistines were the people that were ruling over Israel during the time of Samson. And then later on, the Philistines are the people that King Saul is going to be fighting against. They're going to be the people that King David is fighting against. So they're going to be a major threat to Israel later on, because they are a warlike people, but they're not in power just yet. They're new to the land. They're not an established power. But apparently they are just enough of a power that God is leading the Israelites away from them, right? God is seeing that they are a threat to Israel, most likely because the Israelites don't have any warriors, right? The Israelites wouldn't have had weaponry, they wouldn't have had swords, they wouldn't have had, military leaders, they wouldn't have, known how to fight, because they were slaves their whole lives. They wouldn't know any of this stuff. So even if they're a rudimentary people, they would still be conquered by them because the Israelites wouldn't know how to fight. So the Philistines were in the land at this point. This might be the first listing of the Philistines. I can't remember if the Philistines have been mentioned in passing so far, but this is the first time I can recall them being listed. Just keep in mind that they're in the land now. They're not a ruling power. They will become much more important in the Iron Age whenever they are a ruling power. But that's going to be a couple books from now. But the Philistines might be listed here and there. Let me get caught up on chat. Oh my gosh. Okay, so Skylander. Teachers reading the Bible, me being stupid by actually watching the entire class. Oh my gosh. I mean, hey, can you do both at the same time? Can you watch that and also have this in the background? I mean, it's better than nothing, that's for sure. And learning the lore. You mean the lore of the Bible or the lore of Ben 10? Which are you learning the lore about? Or both? Oh, but Skylander, it's good to see you, man. I'm glad that you're here tonight. Glad that you're here to have a good time with us. Hopefully you can learn a thing or two. I know you're making a joke about being stupid about this, but I mean, in reality, a lot of us, we're all stupid about this. I mean, I'm not saying that in a demeaning way. I'm saying that as in all of us have many more things that we have to learn, and in a way that we should approach Scripture in a way that we don't know anything, and we're here to let God speak to us. But yeah, good to see you, man. Drink water. Oh gosh, do I have a water near me? Do you have a water over there? I do. Can I have your water? They're telling me I have to drink water, so thank you. This is why I'm here in Utah. So say hi.
Hi.
so they can
Is
redeem
the camera delayed?
It's all well, yes.
Okay.
I'll explain that later. But yes, so Cole, thank you for reminding me to drink water. And also, these freaks like to see me do this occasionally too. They pay me to do this, so. Cole, good to see you, man. Cole, thank you for reminding me to drink water and all that stuff. Glad to see you here. What am I guessing? Oh my gosh, they're telling me to do a whole bunch of things. Okay, they're also paying me to do 10 push-ups, so. You want to record me? You want to point the camera at me while I do 10 push-ups?
How can I?
Oh, it's my phone.
Your phone.
My
Okay.
phone.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. And also, thank you guys for helping me get my exercise in.
Logan,
what's
you
up?
messed up, dude. You could have made a girlfriend reveal channel points.
Oh, she's already been on the channel, though.
Oh, I forgot.
I didn't know you were back there.
What?
I didn't know you were back there. Until I
Just
turned
like
around to
5
look for...
seconds ago.
I was gonna say, until I looked back for water, I didn't know you were there.
5 seconds ago.
Cole says hi.
Hi, Cole.
Skylander says hi.
Is that just his name? Or...
Mhm.
Oh, hi.
We'll get back to the Bible study. I finally played Bolt Action. What's Bolt Action? Okay, I'm curious. Also, Nate lurking and listening. Yeah, man. I mean, we have a ton of lurkers that come through, which I'm not complaining about. I'm glad that people are here, at all to listen. It doesn't matter to me if you're commenting and conversating or whether you are simply just here to listen. Either way, works for me. And 1 second. I thought we were past this issue. Of course it happened. Oh, maybe it's because the camera's again. Sorry about that interruption. I don't know. Yeah, Nate, thank you for letting me know. It's so weird. It'll happen out of nowhere. Okay, so if you guys know, I've always used my phone as the camera ever since we started back in January last year. And this used to happen all the time when we first started. And I think it was because of CPU issues on my computer. I thought I had it fixed. It still happens on rare occasion. It'll happen once a month or every so often, just out of nowhere. And I don't know why. I still think it's a CPU issue. I think my computer's probably not powerful enough, but oh well. We work with what we have. Bolt Action is a tabletop... Gosh, why can I not read the message? War game. Cole, you'll have to send me some pictures of that. I'm really curious now. You'll have to send me some pictures in the Discord once we're done. But yeah, Nate, thank you for letting me know. Alright, so... yeah, so we were talking about the Philistines. Yeah, like I said, the Philistines will be important. They're not going to be a group that we get too much into. As you guys know, we've been getting really, really deep into Egyptian culture and Egyptian mythology to kind of explain who they are and explain how that fits into the biblical narrative and everything like that. Philistines will do that eventually once we get into, the Iron Age books of the Bible, like Judges and 1st and 2nd, Kings and all that stuff. But right now, they're just going to be a passing group. But anyways, so the Israelites have now left Egypt, right? Where we left off last time, they did the Exodus from Egypt, right? God sent the 10 plagues, and on the 10th plague, the Passover of the angel of the Lord passed over through the land of Egypt, killed all the firstborn animals and Egyptian children, and all of that stuff. And if you want to learn more about that or why God did that, a lot of people, myself included, think that's really cool right off the first bat. But we explain the importance of that and why that happened and all that stuff back in our last time we did Bible study, if you want to go back onto that. But anyways, that's what we're coming off of. The Israelites have just left the land of Egypt. They're out in the wilderness. They're on their path. And we'll go over that in a second, kind of where they're at right now. But yeah, so as they're leaving out of the land of Egypt, God leads them away from the land of the Philistines because God thought if the people face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt, right? He's scared that, you know, if the Israelites confront conflict from another group of people, they might just flee back to Egypt instead of, you know, putting their faith in God, which is exactly what we see in this passage. It's exactly what we see in this passage. So God was right in that inclination, because as soon as Pharaoh's army shows up, the Israelites' first response is to say, yeah, let's just go back to Egypt. This is too hard. So I guess God was right in this inclination. You know, if the people face war, they may change their minds and return to Egypt. But yeah, so essentially God led the people by the roundabout way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea. And as we're going to see on the map here in just a second, that it really is a roundabout way. Like God really does take them on a massive kind of way, roundabout way, not straightforward at all. So the Israelites went up out of the land of Egypt and prepared for battle. And Moses took with him the bones of Joseph, who had required a solemn oath of the Israelites, saying, God will surely take notice of you, and then you must carry my bones with you from here. Right? So this is, you know, an interesting passing comment at first, but it is important that it is noted here, right? So why is Moses taking the bones of Joseph with him? And why was that a solemn oath? Well, let's go back to the end of Joseph's life where he says this, right? So Genesis 50. This is essentially Jacob has just died here. So Joseph threw himself on his father's face, Jacob, and wept over him and kissed him. And then all of this stuff happens here. Joseph forgives his brothers. And then down here we have Joseph's last days and his last words. So here, the last things that Joseph says and does, this is actually the last verses of the book of Genesis, because as you can see right here, this is the beginning of the book of Exodus. So the very last words of Joseph and the very last words of Genesis, as we have gone over previously, Joseph said to his brothers, I'm about to die, but God will surely come to you, and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. So Joseph made the Israelites swear, saying, when God comes to you, you shall carry up my bones from here. And Joseph died being 110 years old, and he was embalmed and placed in a coffin in Egypt. Right? So this is exactly what's happening. You know, when God surely comes to you and brings you up out of this land, to the land that he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? This is exactly what's happening. It's finally happening, right? After all these hundreds of years, God is actually leading the Israelites up out of the land of Egypt back to the land that he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's exactly what's happening right here. So Joseph made the Israelites swear, when God comes to you, you shall carry my bones up here, right? And he doesn't explain it here, but the cultural reason for this is so that Joseph could be buried with his extended family, right? So there is, oh gosh, Piper Scout. Thank you, man. How's it going tonight? Good to see you. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you have been blessed enough by our little Bible study here tonight that you would follow us. Should I call you Piper Scout or should I call you by something else? Hi, good to see you, man. Glad that you joined us tonight. Glad that you've given us a follow. It's good to see you. Should I call you Piper Scout or should I call you something else? I'm a girl. Okay. It's good to see you. I'm sorry if I assumed. But yeah, it's good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Glad you've been blessed enough to give us a follow. But if you have something else you'd rather me call you, feel free. If you're just joining in, if you haven't been here for a little bit, we're going over Exodus 13 to 15. Essentially, it's the super popular Israelites crossing the Red Sea as God parts it scene. And we're just back here in Genesis as we're explaining something that's going on in our passage. But yeah, it's good to see you. Glad that you joined us tonight. But yeah, so this is a cultural reason. Joseph is saying that he wants the Israelites to bring his bones up out of Egypt so that he can be buried with his ancestors, right? So if you can remember back to our Genesis Bible study as we went through the book of Genesis, there's a particular tomb where they've all been buried, right? So Abraham buried Sarah in this one tomb. Sarah was Abraham's wife. And then whenever Abraham died, Abraham's sons buried him in the same tomb. and then Isaac was buried in the same tomb with his wife, and all so on and so forth. Even if I remember right, Joseph actually took Jacob back to the same place, if I remember right. Yeah, so thus his sons did for him as he had instructed him. Jacob's sons, right? Jacob's 12 sons, including Joseph. Joseph being the 11th of Jacob's 12 sons. So Jacob's sons did for him as he instructed. They carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field at Machpelah, the field near Mamre, which Abraham bought as a burial site from Ephron the Hittite. After he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. Right. So all of their family's been buried in this cave at the field of Mamre. Right. Abraham, Sarah, Isaac and his wife, now Jacob. I don't. For some reason, I'm feeling like Rachel wasn't buried there for some reason. I could be wrong about that, but for some reason, I feel like I remember Rachel being buried somewhere else. I think if I remember right, Rachel died on one of Jacob's journeys, and she was buried where they were at while they were journeying. If someone remembers that, correct me. But I think all of them have been buried there except for Rachel, if I remember right. Anyways, going back to where we were, back to Exodus 13. So, Joseph made the Israelites swear an oath saying that they would take him back to be buried with the rest of his family back in the land of Canaan, right? So that's what essentially is going on here. Moses took with him the bones of Joseph, who had required a solemn oath of the Israelites, saying, God will surely take notice of you, and then you must carry my bones up with you from here. Right? This is the exact words quoted from Genesis that we just read over in Genesis 50. So then the Israelites set out from Succoth, which is where they were in Egypt, or right outside of Egypt after they had left Egypt after the Exodus, and they camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. And as they did this, the Lord went in front of them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them along the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light. And this is going to be a common thing throughout a lot of the upcoming Old Testament, is this pillar. So essentially just picture it in the daytime, it appears as like a literal cloud that is guiding them. And then by night, since it's harder to see the cloud, it was fire. And this is going to be a common thing, right? So this is the first time that we see this pillar of cloud and fire. But as this goes on, this is going to be a thing that continues to guide the Israelites back to the land of Canaan. So we're going to see this same pillar of cloud and pillar of fire a lot throughout the next coming chapters and coming book. But so essentially, as they leave the land of Egypt, God's going to continue to guide the people. He's not just going to, God doesn't just save the Israelites and just, leave them like, oh, I saved you, you're fine now, figure it out. Like, God is still with them. God's still guiding them. God's still keeping them. So similar to like how we talked about last time we did Bible study. I almost said last week because we usually do it every week, but it's been a couple weeks. The last time we did the Bible study, we were talking about how the Israelite Passover is an equivalent to, the cross and everything that comes with that, right? So God saves the Israelites from their captivity to the Israelites to bring them into a new group of people, into a new freedom, and they celebrate the Passover meal to remember that, in the same way that the cross event saves us as Christians from our captivity to sin. And we remember God saving us through whatever you call it, communion, Eucharist, the Lord's Supper. I know there's a lot of names for it. It's essentially a parallel event. And I mean, there's so many parallels we went over last time. I don't even know if I can go over them all right now, but in the same way that the Exodus is the event that begins the Israelite nation, the cross event is the event that starts and creates the Christian church. And there's so many parallels. And in the same way, as we also talked about, whenever God saves the Israelites from their captivity, he doesn't just leave them after that. He stays with them and he guides them through the wilderness and he guides them to the promised land and shows them all the stuff that they need to do in order to get there. And in the same way, God doesn't just, save us from our sin and then leave us to, be here on earth. He gives us his word and he speaks to us. And he does all of these things to show us how it is that we can continue to live our lives on this earth for him, and how we go about living the new lives, the new freedom that he's given us. So God doesn't just leave the Israelites. He continues to guide them through the wilderness, through this pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. And this isn't the only way he's going to lead them. We're going to have plenty more of that throughout the coming couple books here. And we'll get into that as well. But for this section here, so he gives the pillar of cloud by day to give them, he gives them pillar of cloud by day to lead them along the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light so that they might travel by day and by night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. So God was always with them, guiding them. It wasn't just like, this particular period of time, God sends his pillar to guide them, and then they're good for a little bit, and then he sends it back. It clarifies, no, God was with them the whole time. God was always with them, guiding them. It was always in front of them, and it never left its place in front of the people. So we have this pillar of cloud. Gosh, I don't know why I can't say that tonight. We have the pillars of cloud and fire that are guiding the Israelites. And as it is guiding the Israelites, they end up getting to the Red Sea. So then the Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites to turn back and camp in front of Pi-hahiroth," right? So, I'm like it's saying here, to turn back and camp, right? Because as it was just saying a little bit ago, God is leading them in roundabout ways, right? God did not lead them in the land of the Philistines, although that was nearer, for God thought if the people face war, they may change their minds. So God led the people by the roundabout way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea, right? So God's just leading them in these weird roundabout ways through the wilderness. And we can see a map of that in a second. But he tells the Israelites to turn back and camp in front of Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, in front of Baal-zephon. You shall camp opposite it by the sea. And he continues, "Pharaoh will say of the Israelites, they are wandering aimlessly in the land," because they are wandering aimlessly in the land, "and the wilderness is closed in on them," which it has. They're stuck in this little area by the sea, and they're closed in, right? So Pharaoh's not wrong in saying this. Pharaoh's absolutely right in saying, yes, the Israelites are wandering around aimlessly in the land, and the wilderness is closed in on them. He's right. But, God's telling Moses that this is what Pharaoh's going to say. And then God continues to speak to Moses, and he says, "I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them, so that I will gain glory for myself over Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord." And they did so. And I know we've talked about what it means that God hardens Pharaoh's heart for a ton of weeks now, because that was the whole central theme of the 10 plagues is, what does that mean that God is hardening Pharaoh's heart, and what does that mean theologically speaking, and all this stuff. So I won't go over all that again. But essentially, the conclusion is that God can be hardening Pharaoh's heart, but also that Pharaoh can be willingly doing so himself, right? So if you read the 10 plague accounts, there are 3 different accounts that are given, and it ping-pongs back and forth between them all the time, right? So in the first plague, it says something on the lines of, God hardens Pharaoh's heart, right? As if God was acting on Pharaoh's heart. And then there's another one that says that Pharaoh's heart has been hardened, like passively. Like God didn't intervene, Pharaoh didn't intervene. It was just passively hardened for whatever reason. And then there's other plagues where it specifically says that Pharaoh hardened his own heart and did such, right? So it says all 3 at different times, right? And I don't think that's a mistake. And as we read through a lot of commentaries, they didn't think the same thing either. It seems that in God's sovereign will, the free will of humans can also line up with what God wants, right? God can bend his plans to work around the free will of humans, and also, right, so essentially, it is possible that God can be sovereign over all things, and plan all things, and make all things work for his glory, but also have humans have the free will to make their own choices in this life. And both can be true at the same time. And Pharaoh's heart is a way that that is exemplified, right? Pharaoh is of his own free will hardening his heart, but also, as it says that God is hardening Pharaoh's heart so that he can do such and such and such, right? It says that God hardens Pharaoh's heart so that he can show his glory to the Egyptians and show them that he is really God, right? So God's will is being enacted in that, and it is God's will that Pharaoh's heart will be hardened in this instance so that he can show his glory, right? The same, I mean, it's essentially the same wording here as it was in the plagues, right? It's not the exact same wording, but it's pretty close, right? I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them so that I will gain glory for myself over Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, right? This is almost exactly how it was worded during the plagues, right? I will harden Pharaoh's heart, or sometimes it said Pharaoh will harden his heart. It went back and forth. And then Pharaoh will do such and such, and then because Pharaoh does such and such, I will gain glory over Pharaoh and over the Egyptians. So it's essentially the same thing, right? And if you want to hear more about, you know, that theology and what that means, we have the previous Bible studies uploaded if you want to listen more onto that. If I know it's a really confusing thing, that's why we spent entire Bible study just talking about what that meant, pretty much. So it's a confusing thing, I know. And also, if you have any more questions about that, feel free to, you know, if Zev's here in chat, I know he would love to answer that. Or if you want to message me in the Discord, feel free. I would love to talk to you more about it and answer questions. And that goes for anything. I'm always here to answer you guys' questions. So segue to that. But so continuing on, when the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the minds of Pharaoh and his Egyptians were changed toward the people. Right? So going along with what I was just saying, right? God is hardening Pharaoh's heart, but also the same passage in the next verse says, when the king of Egypt was told that the people fled, the mind of Pharaoh and his officials were changed, right? So as if they were changing their own minds, right? So even in the same passage, it's saying both at the same time, that God is hardening their hearts, but also they're changing their own minds. So they say to themselves, what have we done letting Israel leave our service? So Pharaoh had his chariot made ready, and took his army with him. He took 600 picked chariots, and all the other chariots of Egypt with officers over all of them. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the Israelites who were going out boldly. The Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, his chariot drivers, and his army. They overtook them, camped by the sea, by Pi Hahiroth, in front of Baal Zephon. Right? So we'll pull up the map real quick. I think it should show lines. How do I get it to do that? Let's see if I can get it to show the lines of the Exodus. I don't know why it's not showing them now. But anyways, so, well, here it is. The reason that they're grayed out, so I guess this is an important thing to note, is, you know, this is very old. This is very old scripture. And in that sense, we don't know where all of these places are that are being listed, right? So for instance, Ramses here, we know where Ramses is. We've dug up Ramses archaeologically in the modern day. We know that this is where Ramses is, and Pithom and Sukkoth and stuff like that. So that's why they are in bold lettering, is because we know this is where Zone is. This is where Ramses is. This is where Pithom is. But as you can see, there are 3 places here that are listed as Pi Hahiroth. And that's because we have no idea. We have no idea where this city is. And really, it wasn't a city. Pi Hahiroth was not a city. It wasn't a major settlement. It was probably just a small place where a couple people lived. And a big part of the reason why we don't know where Pi Hahiroth is because it's not mentioned pretty much at all in the Bible, other than like this event. And also, we can't really make a straight line, right? Like if the Exodus from Egypt was a straight line to the Promised Land, we could probably say like, oh, this is it. But it very clearly says in our passage that God leads them in these weird roundabout ways, right? Like up here, where was it? So God led the people by the roundabout way of the wilderness towards the Red Sea. They are wandering aimlessly in the land. The wilderness is closed in on them. So we don't really know exactly where Pi-Hayath is, but we know where Succoth is. We know where Ramses is. We know where these other ones are. So we know that they leave from Succoth. We know that they are trying to avoid the Philistines. And we know that they are near the Red Sea. But really, this is kind of all the Red Sea. So the question is, where did they cross the Red Sea? Was it this part of the Red Sea, this part, this part? Where along the Red Sea did they cross? And we don't know. Because we know that they were leading a weird roundabout way through the wilderness. So maybe they just went straight across, but that doesn't seem likely since they were wandering around. So maybe they're wandering up around here. Maybe they're wandering up and around down here. I mean, there's different reasons for all of this, right? Because we know that the Philistines were a northern people. They were living more up here because they were sea people, right? So God's leading them away from the Philistines. So maybe God's leading them from Succoth down south so that they can avoid the Philistines. Or maybe they're taking a straightway path and it's right here. Or maybe it's up in the air, right? Point is, they're wandering around in the wilderness. They leave from Succoth. They're going somewhere along the Red Sea, and it is somewhere where they're being trapped in, right? So as you can see right here, this is a good candidate because they're trapped in by the sea, right? Same thing here. They're kind of trapped in by the sea. And then down here as well. I mean, there's a little bit of a land route here, but the land is kind of all around them too. There's just be this little narrow way here. So the Israelites are kind of wandering around. And they're going from Succoth to Pi-Hahiroth. I guess that's all that we know. We know that they're leaving Succoth, and we know that this is Succoth. We know that they are wandering around aimlessly. We know that they are being trapped in by the land. We know that they're avoiding the Philistines, and we know that they're going to cross the Red Sea. These are the three areas that we think it could be. We're not sure. But anyways, that's the map if you're wondering about where they could be going and all of that stuff. Zev, you threw me off. Gosh, all the name changes, man. You gotta stop with. I mean, I'm not too much complaining about the name changes, but also sometimes it can throw me off. Yes, I know the angle's a little bit weird. Well, I guess for everybody who's here now who wasn't here earlier, I'm in another new setup, as you guys can see. I'm not at my room in Kentucky, and I'm not even at my parents' house in Pennsylvania. I'm in another brand new place in Utah. So I travel around a lot, but I didn't want my travels to stop us from studying the Word of God. So, but Zev, good to see you. I'm glad you're here. The angle is a little bit weird, but it's okay. We're working with what we have. I mean, hi. Yes. I mean, I'll take that. TBH, it's kind of dumb. They got lost. They should have just used Waze. Well, it's not that they got lost. It's that God that was leading them this way. I know you're joining in a little bit late, but let me re-show you. When Pharaoh let the Israelites go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For God thought, if the people face war, they may change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led them by the roundabout way of the wilderness towards the Red Sea. And then as as Pharaoh in Egypt is surveying the Israelites, he's saying, oh, they're just wandering around aimlessly in the land. They have no idea what they're doing, and the wilderness is closing in on them. So it's not that they are going around aimlessly. It's that God's leading them around aimlessly with the pillar of cloud and fire.
Do you think if they had Waze back then, you could report Philistines?
Probably. Gosh,
like you can report cops. You know, you can report cops on Waze.
I mean,
you could report Philistines.
Have you guys? So speaking of, did you guys know that? I don't remember what country it was. I want to say it was Hong Kong. I don't remember. There were actually countries that were using like Apple Maps and Google Maps and like all those different apps to like report like whenever it was like all the oppression going down and they were like trying to like do their protests without being shut down, they would actually use those apps and report it with that feature to avoid and let their protests happen.
Huh.
So like it's kind of the same thing. I mean, realistically, if they had these apps back in the ancient day, they would absolutely have used these for war. I mean, there's no question about it. Literally, like, everything in their lives back then was centered around how they could get one up on all the other nations around them. So, like, 100% they would use it for war. 100%. You called Hong Kong a country house? Oh, I'm gonna get shut down by China, aren't I? That's sad.
Oh no.
That's
Oh
really,
no.
that's a really sad thing. Am I gonna have to make an apology to the government in Chinese, or in Mandarin? Sorry, because it's not Chinese, it's Mandarin. I'm gonna have to make an apology to the Chinese government in Mandarin, aren't I? That's sad. I'm gonna be the new John Cena, you know, bowing to the powers of the Chinese government. Watch me actually be. I mean, listen, guys. This is all I'm saying. If I go away mysteriously, you don't see me next week for Bible study, you know what happened. It was right here. It's recorded. If I'm not here, I guess I'm making an Epstein claim. You know, if I'm gone, it wasn't me. I didn't do it. Oh my gosh, we're way off track. But did you guys hear the official Epstein's list is going to be released soon?
The official edited and peer reviewed so that no one alive gets in trouble version.
Yeah, that's true. It'll probably be peer reviewed. It'll definitely be peer reviewed. Never mind. What am I saying? But apparently it is going to be released soon, so that's interesting.
It'll just be like basically another fundraiser for the government. You just have to pay like however many million to like not have your name released.
It's going to be part of the next. It's going to be a part of the next presidential election somehow. You know, getting a bunch of bad senators that people don't like on it or something. I don't know. Oh man. Anyways. If you're new here, this is what we do, you know, all over the place. But we're here to learn too. We're here to have fun and learn. We can do both at the same time. So yeah, so Pharaoh is drawing near to the Israelites. And as we just showed on the map, that could be a number of different places. You know, with how old this is, some of the places we know pretty definitely. Some of them we don't know so definitely. But, I mean, geographically, it doesn't really matter. It just matters what happens in the story. So that's what we're going to try and focus on. So Pharaoh and his army is drawing near to the Israelites. And the Israelites looked back, and there were the Egyptians advancing on them. In great fear, the Israelites cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us, bringing us out of Egypt? Is this not the very thing we told you in Egypt? Let us alone and let us serve the Egyptians, which is something that is recorded in the Bible. Whenever Moses first came to the land of Egypt, gosh, I don't remember what chapter that was off the top of my head, and I won't go through the pain of scrolling through right now to, you know, show you guys. I won't make you guys go through that pain of letting me find it for a minute or two. But whenever Moses first came to the land of Egypt from God's call, right? God met Moses at Sinai in the burning bush, and he told Moses, go to the land of Egypt. I want you to be a spokesperson for my people in Israel. And I want you to be the lead person to help me. I want you to be the one who speaks to Pharaoh and tells him what I'm going to do to free my people from Israel, or from Egypt, right? And as soon as Moses gets there for the first time, he approaches Pharaoh and he says, you know, listen, like, God wants you to let my people go. I want you to free them. And this is before the 10 plagues happened, right? This is before the 10 plagues. Moses just goes to Pharaoh and he gives him an opportunity. And he just says, hey, do you want to let the people go? He says no. And instead, Pharaoh's actually angry that, you know, Moses would even suggest that the Israelites should leave. So what Pharaoh does is he actually makes the labor harder on the Israelites. You know, Pharaoh says, you know, you already had this much work to do. I'm going to make it twice as hard. Just because you would even suggest that you should leave. Right? So whenever that happened, the Israelites said, listen, Moses, like, get out of here. You're making things harder on us. Just leave us alone and let us serve the Egyptians, because it's better for us to just live in this slavery than to be dead or to have to work harder. Right? So that's what they're saying here, right? Is this not the very thing we told you in Egypt? Let us alone and let us serve the Egyptians, right? They're repeating now what they said to Moses whenever he first came to Egypt, right? And they're complaining. They're saying, why would you bring us out of Egypt? Why wouldn't you have just let us stay in slavery? Because now we're going to die. And it'd be better for us to be in slavery than to die. And you know, the first time this happened, the first time that the Israelites said this, right? Let us alone and let us serve the Egyptians. The first time that they said this, back whenever Moses first came to the land, I gave the Israelites a pass, right? And let me explain, like I did last time, right? If this was happening to you, you would most likely think the same way, right? We fortunately have the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of knowing what happened in these events, right? We have the story, we can read it, we can know what happened, and we can, judge off of that. They don't have that luxury, right? So whenever Moses first comes to the land of Egypt and he's saying these things to the Israelites, I gave them a pass because what are the Israelites seeing? They don't know what's going to come up. What they're seeing is this Moses guy who used to be Pharaoh's adopted son, who killed a couple people and ran away, is coming back to us now, claiming that he wants to be one of us, and that our God has spoke to him and wants him to free us? Right? Like, that sounds crazy. That sounds crazy if you were hearing that culturally in your moment. You'd say, this guy who killed a bunch of guys, who was in Pharaoh's court, who was Pharaoh's adopted son, he's coming to us and saying that God's going to free us from slavery, right? He's crazy. And then, whenever Moses does go to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh makes their work twice as hard, they have good reason to say, leave us alone. The Israelites have good reason to say, listen, Moses, you tried, but leave us alone, right? We were fine without you. You're making things worse. That being said, even though I gave them a pass the last time, I don't know if I'm going to give them so much of a pass this time. And that's because this time, they have just seen God enact the 10 plagues on Egypt. They just witnessed God, blot out the sun for a while and make the river into blood and, send these sicknesses over the land and plagues of, bugs. And then he, killed a bunch of firstborns. They just witnessed this. It isn't like this was, years ago. This was, yesterday. We don't know the exact time frames because the exact time frames aren't mentioned, but, it can't have been more than, a month. This just happened. They just left Egypt. They just witnessed all this stuff happen. And even after they witnessed all this stuff happen, they're saying now, why did you bring us out? Leave us alone. Let us serve the Egyptians. You've brought us here to die. They've lost faith in God already. They've already lost faith in God after he just saved them. Zev, I mean, is that any different than Revelation, though? The Bible says people will walk away from God in that period of time. Oh, absolutely. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen today either. I think it does happen today. I think just in the same way that this happened with the Israelites here in this scripture, in the same way that it happened with the Israelites when Moses first showed up in Egypt, it also happens a bunch of other times in the Bible. It happens after God sends the first judge, and after God sends the second judge, and after God sends 10 more judges, right? There were 12 judges, and after every single one of those 12 judges, the Israelites lost their faith in God and forgot what he did to save them. And then there's all these different kings that forget what God has done for them, right? Once the time of the kings of the nation of Israel comes around, this king forgets what God has done and serves false gods. And then this king comes and he forgets what God has done and he serves false gods. And I don't think we're exempt to that either, right? I think Jesus even talks about this himself, right? Jesus has the parable of the sower and the seeds, right? And Jesus talks about how some of the seed will fall on the dry earth, right? And they won't even be rooted, right? They won't even get into the earth, right? And those are essentially the people who, hear the word of God and they just dismiss it, all entirely, right? And that's not the group of people we'd be talking about right now. But there's other groups who do hear the word of God, and they do have a change of heart, and then they immediately forget what happens, right? And that's what Jesus is talking about in that parable, right? He talks about some seeds that hear the word, some people who hear the word, and then they have a change of heart, and then after a little bit of time, the thorns choke them up, and the plant dies, right? In the same way that, we hear the word of God, and we have a change of heart, and then, a couple weeks go by, and we forget about it, and we go back to living our old life, right? Or there's the other ones that have the birds come up and snatch them up. Like Satan comes in, and his work, he seeps in, and he overpowers what God originally did for us the first time. Even though God really did reach our hearts, Satan comes in and plucks us up and takes us away, right? Like Jesus even talks about this himself, that people will hear and be saved and then forget what God has done for them, right? In the same way that the Israelites were literally just saved from Egypt, literally just saved, and they're already forgetting what God's done for them and going back to their old ways. We can do the same thing. Like Jesus talks about that himself. Jesus says, you will be like the seeds. You will hear the word, and some of you will accept it, and then you'll be drowned out. And how quick are we to have God do something miraculous in our life? Like save us from some sin, or heal a loved one, or do something else, and then go back to how we were living, right? I mean, I'm not saying this doesn't happen today too. I'm just saying, I'm saying that this is something we can look out for too, right? The first time the Israelites had more of a pass because they didn't see any of this stuff that God has done for them. They just had this random kooky old dude come to them and say, hey, I'm going to save you. And then things got worse for them, right? That's reasonable. I feel like all of us would do the same thing. This one's a bit harder. God has just saved them, and they've witnessed all these miraculous things that God has done to save them, and they're turning back on him already. I'm not saying we can't do the same, but I am saying it's something we should avoid. It's something that we should be wary of. It's something that we should seek to avoid and seek to remember. That's for sure. So the Israelites are here. They complain to God and to Moses, right? Because they are crying out to the Lord, and they say to Moses, right? So they're doing both at the same time, essentially. And in doing so, they say, what have you done to us, bringing us out of Egypt? Is this not the very thing we told you in Egypt? Let us alone and let us serve the Egyptians. For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. But Moses has a response. Moses says, do not be afraid. Stand firm and see the deliverance that the Lord will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. And just a funny note here. The Israelites will see the Egyptians again. But technically that'll be their kids. Just to jump ahead in the story a little bit, this whole generation of Israelites will die before they reach the promised land of Israel. So technically Moses isn't wrong in saying that this generation will never see the Egyptians again. I guess it's kind of like a weird, like, you know how genies, like you wish for something from a genie and then it's like manipulated and something. I kind of get like that same feeling from this, even though I know that's not what it's actually trying to say. I kind of get that same feeling. It's like, yeah, my wish is to never see the Egyptians again, and then it's just you and the rest of your family has to deal with them. It's like, I don't know, it kind of feels the same way. It's like, yeah, you won't see them ever again, but I'm not going to tell you that your kids won't. I don't know, I just think that's funny. But anyways, and then he concludes by telling the Israelites, the Lord will fight for you, and you have only to keep still. Right? And this is what I was talking about earlier down here in this section. This is the part that we forget about, and this is the part that I want to show you that really incredible scene here in a second. This was not an immediate thing. Like, whenever we picture this story, we picture this happening like in an instant, Like, oh, Pharaoh's court is on the hill. They're coming towards us. We're complaining. God speaks to Moses. Moses picks up his rod. The sea is parted, and we go across. That's how we picture it. That's how we talk about it in our sermons. But that's not how it happened, right? We forget that they had to sit here for a while in this agonizing pain of like, they can see Pharaoh and his army, and they're just right on the hill. And we're just down here, we're trapped. And they just have to sit there. They have to wait it out, right? The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to keep still. And like, as it says down here, you know, the angel of the Lord who was going before the Israelite army moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud and fire moved from in front of them and took its place behind them. It came between the army of Egypt and the army of Israel. And so the cloud was there with the darkness and lit up the night, and one did not come near the other all night. Right? So this happened at least through a night. This happened at least through a night. They were just sitting there in agonizing pain, waiting for what was going to happen. And, you know, I won't go on a whole spiel about this, but I think this goes back into exactly what we've been talking about throughout a lot of the book of Genesis and pretty much all of the book of Exodus so far. It's that God will fulfill his promises, but that he won't always do so on our time, right? God promises to Abraham, like, you will have a great seed and you will become a great nation and all of this other stuff, right? And through you, all the nations of the world will be blessed. But that doesn't happen in Abraham's life, or Isaac's life, or Jacob's life, or Joseph's life. And it still hasn't happened yet, right? They're a great people now, but they're certainly not a nation. They're certainly not blessing people. And God says that he will free the Israelites from captivity in Egypt. And he does. He does free them. Not on their time. And even now, the Lord will fight for you. And you have only to keep still. In the same way that we've been talking about for so long, and we're going to keep talking about, God will fulfill his promises to you, to me, to everyone. But we have to be patient. We have to understand that God will do things on his own time, and we have to be content with that. We can't be like Abraham, who has this amazing promise and who seeks to fulfill it on his own terms and on his own time by sleeping with a slave. We can't be like the Israelites who expect their salvation immediately, who get upset whenever things don't happen on their own time. We have to know that God will deliver on his promises, but that sometimes we have to be patient for that. And sometimes we have to be patient for a very long time. So then the Lord continues to speak to Moses. And the Lord says to Moses, "Why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward. But you lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, that the Israelites may go into the sea on dry ground. Then I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. And so I will gain glory for myself over Pharaoh and all his army, his chariots and his chariot drivers. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gained glory for myself over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his chariot drivers." Right? So as God was talking about earlier, you know, Pharaoh's heart will be hardened, and he will gain glory over them. How will he do so? This is how he will do so. This is how God will find his glory in this moment, where he will show the Israelites his glory, where he will show his glory to the Egyptians, where he will show that he is God. And this sounds a harsh reality, right? And this is one of those times, as we've talked about before, that a lot of times in the Old Testament, things seem really harsh at first value, or at first glance, right? Like the killing of the firstborn in Egypt, right? Like that, on first glance, it's like, what God does that, right? But in the context of the situation, God has done everything else, right? God has been so gracious to the Egyptians in granting them options, in granting them opportunities to avoid this, right? Let's go back up to the plagues, right? This is even mentioned. I believe it was in the 7th plague, right? If I can find it. Gosh, it's a little ways up. The 8th plague, I believe it's in the 7th plague. We've come back to this one a couple times. Yeah, thus says the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, let my people go so that they may worship me. For this time I'll send my plagues upon you, your officials, your people, so that you may know that there is no one like me in the earth. For by now I could have stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with pestilence, and you would have been cut off from the earth. But this is why I let you live, to show you my power and to make my name resound through all the earth. You, Pharaoh, are still exalting yourself against my people and will not let them go. Tomorrow at this time I will cause the heaviest hail to fall that has ever fallen in Egypt from the day it was founded until now. Right? So even God is admitting in this passage that he could have just killed them all. Like, if God wanted to accomplish his will in the world, he could have just killed all of them and let the Israelites be free. But instead, God grants opportunities, right? God goes to Pharaoh the first time, and he just, he says to Moses, go to Pharaoh and tell him to let the people go. And there's no consequence the first time. Pharaoh just doubles the workload on the Israelites, and there's no punishment for Pharaoh. And then the second time Moses comes back, there's a plague. The first plague, the plague of the Red Sea, or the Nile being turned into blood, right? And that's, it's a big deal, but it's pretty minor compared to the things that are going to be coming, right? Probably nobody died. Then the next plague comes, and it's a little bit worse. And God gives them another opportunity. Let my people go, or I will send this plague. And then he doesn't do it, so he sends the plague. And then God gives a third opportunity. He says, let my people go, or this will happen. Pharaoh doesn't listen, so he sends another plague, one that's a slightly bit worse again, and then again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And then by the time that the 10th plague comes around, they've just increased in severity every time, right? God's given 11 opportunities now, right? And on the 10th plague, God even gives an extra warning. God says, last chance. This is what will happen if you do not let my people go. All the firstborn will die. Final chance. You know what this will happen. You've seen all the other plagues come true. You've seen it. You know this will happen. Final chance. Pharaoh still doesn't listen. Right? And now that we're here in chapter 14, once again, it's this thing where it's like, at first glance in the modern day as Christians, we read this and we're like, there's this stigma in the church today that there's the Old Testament judgmental war God, and then there's this New Testament God that's so loving and kind. But whenever I read the Bible, I see a God that is the same all the way through. I see a God that is loving, kind, slow to anger, a God that is just at the same time as being loving. In the same way in the New Testament, God is a God that is loving and just. God says, listen, I love you so much that I will send my son, and all you have to do is believe on him to be saved. But if not, I can't let your sin go unpunished. And the same thing in the Old Testament. God does this all the time. He grants second chances. He's slow to anger. He loves his people. He loves his creation. And he grants all these chances for his people. Even other people, not even just the Israelites. He grants extra chances for the Egyptians and for these other nations. And he says, chance after chance after chance, loves them, slow to anger. But at the same time, our God is an all-loving God, and he's an all-good God. And if he's an all-good God, he can't let sin go unpunished. He can't let our wrong decisions go without consequence, right? The analogy that we used previously with the judge, right? Let's say you are a judge over a court, and the person on trial is a mass murderer. And, you're the judge, and you're just like, I'm just a loving guy. And, this guy deserves death, but I just can't bring myself to do it. He's free. If you were in that court, you'd be like, no, this guy's a horrible judge. You're just going to let this guy go free? Right? You wouldn't think of that judge as being a good judge. You wouldn't think that that judge is a good dude. You wouldn't think that he's good at his job or good at anything. Right? In order to be all good, you have to be an all good judge. And that's the crazy part. That's the good news of the whole gospel, is that God can be all loving and grant the greatest gift to all people, but also at the same time be all just and all good. And God granted many opportunities to the Egyptians. God granted many opportunities to Pharaoh. And now Pharaoh has made up his mind and he's going to kill them all. Pharaoh's coming here, he's going to kill all the Israelites. He's going to kill them all where they stand. God can't let that stand. God's all good, he's all loving, but he can't let something like that go. Ooh, who doesn't love it when God gains glory for himself? Aristotle. It's good to see you, man. Good to see you, Aristotle. How are you doing tonight, man? Glad that you've joined us tonight. Sorry, I was on a little bit of a rant. I didn't want to end my train of thought. So I know you sent that a little bit ago, but I didn't want to end my train of thought where I was heading with that. I knew I would have lost my spot. But Aristotle, it's good to see you, man. I'm glad you're here. Glad you're here for a little bit of a Bible study tonight. Hopefully you're being blessed by this conversation. But, so, as Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites looked back, and there were the Israelites. But Moses said to the people, do not be afraid, stand firm. See the deliverance that the Lord will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to keep still. And then we had that paragraph, I will gain glory for myself over the Egyptians in this moment. And then we have this one right here that I was talking about earlier that I always find to be really intriguing, and I feel like we don't talk about enough. I don't feel like we talk about this part of the passage enough, and I feel like we've kind of lost it in our modern interpretations. I feel like whenever we tell this story nowadays, we leave out this part. And it's really cool in my mind. I think it's really a cool thing. Like, God stands between the Pharaoh's army and the Israelites. He puts his cloud in the middle of them so that Pharaoh's army can't approach them, while the Israelites get themselves together and do this whole thing. Like, while God's speaking to them and telling them what to do and telling Moses what to do to save the people, and the Israelites are gathering themselves together, God is standing there in between them with his cloud, right? Pillar of cloud moved from in front of them and took its place behind them. It came between the army of Egypt and the army of Israel, so that the cloud was there with the complete darkness, and it lit up the night, right? So they were there for so long, like they were there probably overnight, right? They were just there waiting. I feel like we miss out on that part a lot. Good listening to some thoroughly... Gosh, I can't tell if that's supposed to be Western or Wesleyan. Maybe it's supposed to be a combination Western Wesleyan exposition. Maybe that's what that's... If that's supposed to be a Western... If that's supposed to be like a made-up term, Western Wesleyan exposition, I love that. I might coin that off of you. Wesleyan. I love that. Wesleyan. Okay, so you were meaning Western? Do you not know what Wesleyan is? So Wesleyan is, gosh, that's actually funny. So do you not know what Wesleyan is? That's ironic, because I'm studying at a Wesleyan school. So Wesleyanism, if you're a Wesleyan, I meant Wesley's. Are you talking, so wait. There might be a little bit of miscommunication here. So, John Wesley. Are you talking about John Wesley, the theologian? I'm assuming. Because usually people who study under John Wesley, they call themselves Wesleyans. Like, it's the Wesleyan church, essentially, is the church that... Like how there's the Lutherans and the... Yes, John Wesley. Okay, so we are on the same thought. So yeah, so like in the same way there's the Lutherans and the Calvinists, there's the Wesleyans, essentially, is how it goes. But yeah. But I like that, Wesleyan. That's interesting, I love that. But yeah, we're going off here. Having a good time. But yeah, so while we're talking, I want to find a scene that I think does a really good job of Prince of Egypt, Red Sea scene. Yeah, okay. So it's a couple minutes long. I think it does a really good job of showing what's actually happening here. If you guys haven't seen The Prince of Egypt, I highly recommend watching this movie. Like, highly, highly, highly recommend watching this movie. I think, even though it takes some creative liberties, I think it does an amazing job of showing the events of this book in a way that we kind of lose as 21st century people who don't understand the context. And I think it does a really good job of showing what's actually happening in these scenarios. Like right here, for instance, like I was just talking about over here, right? This is something that we don't see in the modern portrayals. In the modern portrayals of this event, we see it happening like in an instant. We don't see it happening over a course of time. And we certainly don't see the pillar of cloud, you know, coming in between the armies. And this scene actually does a good job of showing all of this. So I think I want to show it to you guys real quick. Not gonna lie, the Israelites have a great soundtrack. If you're talking about what we're playing right now, we're playing lo-fi. We're playing lo-fi music, if that's what you're talking about. But yeah, so let me, I'll swap over here. Screen capture. If it'll load. Yeah, so we'll watch this real quick. I think that this scene does a really good job of showing what actually happens in this scene.
With this staff, you shall do my wonders.
Well, there's a little bit at the end where Pharaoh's army gets, you know, a little bit swallowed by the ocean, but I guess that particular video cuts off. We don't really need that part anyways. The point of showing that was I wanted to show, this part because, like I said, this is a part that they don't really ever show. This part here, you know, God steps in front of the army and it protects them for a time being while they figure out what's going on. And there's almost this moment, you know, like they're crying out, right? They're crying out, right? where was it? Yeah. In great fear, the Israelites cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us, bringing us out of Egypt? Is this not the very thing we told you to do? Let us alone and let us serve the Egyptians, right? The Israelites are crying, they're discombobulated. Like, it shows very well in the scene, like they're running around and like trying to, gather their families together and almost like preparing for this final moment of death. And they're crying out and it's loud and it's crazy. And then out of nowhere, right, you know, God speaks to Moses, right? And it doesn't actually have God's voice in the scene, but you can clearly see Moses is calm while all the other people are crazy, right? And God speaking to Moses, why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward. But you lift up your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. The Israelites might go over the sea and dry land. And as this is going on, as the Israelites are in a panic and he's speaking to Moses, the pillar of cloud moves from in front of them, behind them, and it comes in between the army and separates them, right? Which is in the scene very clearly, right? You saw it come up out of the water and the fire comes on the ground and it traces a line in front of Pharaoh's army, right? And we never see that in modern depictions, which I think is really cool that they show it in that one. Coming back to like how the biblical narrative portrays it, right? And then it clarifies, like there's some time. It lights up the night, right? Like it comes out, it's bright as day whenever Pharaoh's army comes. And then the cloud comes behind them and it darkens the sky and it becomes night. And the fire that comes in between them lights up the whole night. And then there's almost this like moment of like, the two are separated. Obviously this part's not in the Bible, but in the scene it shows the Israelites as like in this new state of peace. Like it's like completely quiet, right? Like there's like this tension of like what's going to happen. Maybe peace is the wrong word, but they're at this like sense of, what's going to go happen. It's like completely quiet. Nothing's going on. And then as this is all going on, Moses stretches his hand over the sea, and as soon as he does so, the sea is cast back by a strong east wind all night, and it turns the sea into dry land. The waters were divided. The Israelites went into the sea on dry land, the waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. And as this happens, the pillar comes back in front of them to guide them through. So the Egyptians are now able to pursue them again. So the Egyptians pursued and went into the sea after them, all of Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and chariot drivers. At the morning watch, the Lord in the pillar of fire and cloud looked down upon the Egyptian army and threw the Egyptian army into panic. He clogged their chariot wheels so that they turned with difficulty. The Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the Israelites, for the Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Right? And this is super interesting, right? Because we went over this during the 10 plagues, right? The Egyptians came to know God, right? It's exactly as God said. As God said in the 10 plagues, he said, "I will do these things so that my glory will resound, and that the Egyptians may know that I am God." And as the 10 plagues happen, we see that happen, right? The first ones to confess that God is king, like that God is really God, is Pharaoh's wizards. I forget what what it calls them, but essentially Pharaoh's witchcraft wizards, whatever they were called. Like it says, whenever Aaron came with the staff and threw it on the ground and it turned into a snake, Pharaoh was not convinced because they call them magicians. That's what they call them. Pharaoh's magicians came forward and did the same by their staff. They threw their own staff on the ground, and they're through their, Egyptian magician powers, they turned their staff into a snake too. So Pharaoh wasn't convinced. And then same thing with the Red Sea. Moses turns the Red Sea into blood through God's power. And then, Pharaoh isn't convinced because his own magicians are also able to turn water into wine. They have these bowls of water or whatever, who knows. They're also able to turn it into blood. They're able to turn the water into blood too. And so Pharaoh's not convinced. And then, the second plague comes, the third plague comes, and then as, it gets to the third plague, Pharaoh's own magicians aren't able to replicate these miracles anymore. So they give up. And the magicians tell Pharaoh, they're like, "We can't do this. Like, whoever this is, he's super powerful." And the magicians eventually tell Pharaoh, they say, "This is the hand of God. Like, back off. Like, this is too powerful for you. This is too powerful for us." Like, the magicians are the first ones to admit. They say, "This is God." And then a couple more plagues go on, and Pharaoh's court. Like there's Pharaoh as the king, but there's also his court of officials. And eventually, I don't remember exactly what plague. It's later on. Pharaoh's own court turns on Pharaoh too. They say, "Listen, this is the hand of God. Like, let them go. Like, our livestock is dying. Like, we have boils. Like, this is bad. Like, you need to just let this go. This is clearly the hand of God acting on us and our nation, and you need to just let them go." So, first the magicians turn on him, and then Pharaoh's own court turns on Pharaoh, right? And then the Egyptians cry out too, and the Egyptian people eventually cry out too, and they say, you know, just let them go, Pharaoh. Like, we're in pain. And then finally, the 10th plague comes, the death of the firstborn. And what happens in the end? At the very end, Pharaoh says, after the 10th plague has been enacted, Moses comes to Pharaoh one more time, and Pharaoh says, go into the wilderness, worship your God, take your livestock, don't come back. And then he ends his statement. We never mentioned this part. Pharaoh mentions at the very end of his statement, he says to Moses and Aaron, he says, "And bring a blessing for me too." That's pretty powerful coming from the king of Egypt, right? Because as we talked about culturally, Pharaoh was seen as not just the high king of Egypt, he was also seen as the most powerful god of the Egyptian mythology, right? So as an ancient Israelite reading this text, they would have seen this as the god of their own people, the Israelite people, against the high god of Egypt, because culturally that's what it would have been. Pharaoh is the high god of Egypt. The God of Israelites is going against him. Who's going to win? Well, clearly the God of the Israelites has won. And the God of Egypt, Pharaoh, is confessing, your God is higher than me. I may be the highest God of the Egyptian pantheon, but your God, he's higher. And I want him to bring a blessing on me. So not only is it the Israelites who forget God's mighty deeds, because apparently Pharaoh does too. Because even Pharaoh, after admitting that their God was higher and that he wants Moses and Aaron to bring a blessing back on them, changes his mind and pursues after the Israelites, just as the Israelites changed their mind and wanted to go back to Egypt. So everybody apparently forgets all the things that God has done. And now we see once again here what started this conversation. The Egyptians said, "Let us flee from the Israelites, for the Lord is fighting for them against Egypt," doing exactly what God said he would do. He said that I will enact this so that my glory will be shown and so that people will recognize that I am God. And that's exactly what has happened here. Through this event, through everything that has happened here, the Egyptians have come to recognize once again that this is truly the Lord and that he is fighting against them. So then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the water may come back upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots and chariot drivers." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at dawn the sea returned to its normal depth. Right? So it was morning. They went through the night as they waited. They crossed over the sea, and it's morning again. And it's happened over a long period. This was a whole day. We don't talk about that part. I find that really interesting. So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at dawn the sea returned to its normal depth. As the Egyptians fled before it, the Lord tossed the Egyptians into the sea. The waters turned and covered the chariots and the chariot drivers, the entire army of Pharaoh that had followed them into the sea. Not one of them remained. But the Israelites walked on dry ground through the sea, the waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. Thus the Lord saved Israel that day from the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. Israel saw the great work that the Lord did against the Egyptians, so the people feared the Lord and believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. And I think this is the first time that it actually mentions this line. I think this is the first time, with everything that's been going on, right? Before Moses came, and then once Moses comes, and throughout the 10 plagues, and now this, I think this is the first time that it mentions, so the people feared the Lord and believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. I think this is the first time that it explicitly mentions the Israelites believed in the Lord, even after everything that happened. So whenever we read through, usually whenever we do this Bible study, we start off by reading the entire scripture passage for the day. But this time I did it a little bit different for a particular reason. I only read up until the end of chapter 14, and I didn't read chapter 15 like I said we were going to do. And the reason for that is because chapter 15 is a song of celebration for what God did for the Israelites. And I figured it might be best to read through and understand what really God did for his people and end it by singing this song of celebration. I mean, obviously, we can't sing it because it's translated from another language, but we can at least read through it and understand the sentiment that was being sung by the Israelites, led by Moses, after it was all done. So, this is the song led by Moses that the Israelites sang after God saved them from the Egyptians. Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my might. He has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise him, my father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior, the Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he cast into the sea. He picked up officers. His picked officers were sunk in the Red Sea. The floods covered them. They went down into the depths like a stone. Your right hand, O Lord, glorious in power. Your right hand, O Lord, shatter the army. In the greatness of your majesty, you overthrew your adversaries. You sent out your fury. It consumed them like stubble. At the blast of your nostrils, the water piled up. The floods stood up in a heap. The deeps congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake. I will divide the spoil. My desire shall have its fill of them. I will draw my sword. My hand shall destroy them. You blew with your wind. The sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, doing wonders? You stretched out your right hand, the earth swallowed them. In your steadfast love you led the people whom you redeemed. You guided them by your strength to your holy abode. The peoples heard, they trembled. Pangs seized the inhabitants of Philistia. Then the chiefs of Edom were dismayed. Trembling seized the leaders of Moab. All the inhabitants of Canaan melted away. Terror and dread fell upon them. By the might of your arm they became still as a stone, until your people, O Lord, passed by, until the people whom you acquired passed by. You brought them in and planted them on the mountain of your possession, the place, O Lord, that you made your abode, the sanctuary, O Lord, that your hands have established. The Lord will reign forever and ever. And then there's a note here from the narrator. When the horses of Pharaoh with his chariots and his chariot drivers went into the sea, the Lord brought back the waters of the sea upon them, but the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. And then there's a short song here from Miriam, who is Moses' sister. And this is a very interesting line here. We don't have time to go into it, but it mentions Miriam as a prophet. My own theology would get in the way here, but fun fact, this is the first named prophet of Israel. Moses' sister. A woman. So fun fact, the first named prophet of Israel is a woman. So then the prophet Miriam, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women went out after her with tambourines and with dancing. And Miriam sang to them, Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea. So that's what we've got. We went through the passage. That's all the notes that I have, at least. All the things that I found during my studies this week, all the things that I wanted to show you guys. But as always, you guys are always free to ask questions or make comments, and I'll make this a last chance to do so. If any of you guys have any questions you want to make, any comments you want to address, now would be the time before we wrap up here. But as I'm waiting for questions and comments to come in, I'll start talking about some of the last things. So obviously, this is the first stream of the year. If you're new here, I know we had a couple new people, just to let you guys know what we do. So every Tuesday night, we do a game night, if you want to join us for that. We're going to have a new game that we're going to try out coming up here in a little bit that we've been trying out for a little bit on our own time that we think you guys might really like, that I won't spoil just yet. So every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do game night. And every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a Bible study. As you guys can see, we're going through the book of Exodus right now. We're going by chapter through chapter. And we're going to continue to do so. So next Wednesday, if you want to keep doing this Bible study with us, we'll keep doing that as well. Also, we have a Discord that if you want to join in on that, I'll leave a link to that right now. So essentially in this Discord, we do a lot of stuff. So first of all, obviously we announce whenever we're going to be live and doing streams. There's also a couple games that other people play if you want to join in and play with any of them. For instance, we have a public Minecraft server. It's cross-play between Java version and Bedrock version. It's live 24/7. People play on it throughout the week. I play on it. Dietrich plays on it. All of us, we play on it here and there occasionally. We also have specific nights that we announce in the Discord. We'll say we're playing Minecraft tonight for however long if you want to join in the voice call and play with us. Sometimes those have a pretty good turnout. Sometimes it's just a couple of us, but either way, there's still people playing on those nights. Also, if Minecraft is not your fancy, we also have a Clash Royale clan as well. Details to join the Minecraft server and the Clash Royale clan are in the Discord in their respective channels. The Minecraft server is something that Cole helps lead, that I help lead occasionally, and also the Clash Royale clan is something that Dietrich leads. So if you want to talk to Dietrich or Cole respectively for either of those games. Also, in this Discord, we have plenty of other stuff. We have channels where we support each other through a number of things. We have a gym channel. So essentially, like on this channel, we believe in bettering ourselves, physically, mentally, and spiritually. So one of the ways that we like to help people is physically. If you're making your New Year's resolution to get into the gym, to lose some weight, or anything like that, we're here and we go to the gym all the time. We help each other out physically. A lot of the times people will come to us and ask us, questions about, how to get into it, how to start that journey, stuff like that. And we're always welcome to people who want to ask those questions, and we want to be able to help out people who want to, start on a journey to better themselves in whatever way, physically or not. We also do weekly challenges here and there where we try to set out a challenge for all of us to do. So essentially, we'll just put in the Discord, we'll say, hey, for the next week, we're going to all, as a community, try to do this. And essentially, that's a way that we try to better ourselves and to better the people around us. So if the passage that we're reading through the week has something like an application point that we want to latch onto, that we want to practice as a community for the next week, then that's what we'll do. I know that we have been doing this one already, but I'll go into the weekly channel. Usually we make this one based on the current week. A lot of the times these we have found have been kind of overlapping, right? So the last time that we did this challenge was whenever we were talking about the Passover, and the application for that was that we were going to try to remember what God has done for us in the past, right? Remember how God has saved us from our captivity to sin through Christ's death on the cross. And through doing so, we wanted to also count all the little blessings that God has given to us throughout our lives. And as we were looking for an application point for this week, it seemed only appropriate that we would do the same thing. After all, this passage is all about remembering the ways that God provides for us and protects us and saves us in our times of need. And all of chapter 15, in fact, is a song of celebration in remembering what God has done for them in this moment. So we're going to extend our challenge that we had previously to remember what God has done for us, remember how God has saved us, count all of the blessings that God has put on our lives. So we're going to extend that challenge for a little bit longer before we get into our next application point. So we have the weekly challenge, a way to better ourselves and to better the world around us. We've got the gym channel to better ourselves physically. And also we have a prayer request section. So if you guys don't know, we have a prayer request channel in our Discord, and essentially this is a place where people can come in and put all the things that they want prayer for. We are a community that believes in the power of prayer. So as a community, we want to be praying for all of these requests that people have brought forward to us. And one of the ways that we do this is by taking a little bit of time at the end of our Bible studies on Wednesday to go through our prayer requests in our channel and to be praying for them. So I'm going to go through our prayer requests real quick here in the Discord. And as I go through them, say a quick prayer for them if you can, or remember them, write them down so that you can be praying for them throughout the week. So I'm going to start here. Gosh, we've got a long list. A lot of these have been answered, so I'll scroll through the ones that I know have been answered, and I'll go through the ones that still need prayer. So the first prayer is for Evan. For anybody who's new, Evan is one of the people who helped start this channel with me a very long time ago. He has been dealing with some medical conditions Luckily, he does not need the surgery anymore that he thought he might need, but he is still going through a little bit of pain with that. So please be praying for him with that medical condition. Um, Also, we have a prayer request for the special medic. Now, the special medic is another Twitch streamer who does Bible study stuff. He hasn't been live in a little bit. He's been focusing on his studies, but I found him to be an inspiration. So if you want to check out somebody else on Twitch who does Bible study content, please check out the special medic for next time he's live. He was going through Genesis as well, which was really funny because we were going through Genesis at the same time that he was. But we want prayer requests for the special medic for two things. First of all, we want prayer for his missions trip. He has a missions trip that he's trying to raise money to go on. So prayer that he might be able to find the funds to be able to go on that missions trip. And also a prayer request for a friend of his who's been dealing with a medical condition. So be praying for him for both of those two things. Um, Also, we have a couple prayer requests from Cole, a member of ours who does a lot of these game nights with us, a dear friend of mine. He has a couple prayer requests for his family, one for his mom and one for his sister. Um, I've heard that things have been better. They're unspoken prayer requests, but a prayer request for his mom and a prayer request for his sister. Things have been better, but continued prayer for them. Um, Also, we have prayer for. Sorry, a lot of these have been answered, which is really good. Prayer request for the Toxic Family. They're another group that does Bible studies on Twitch, who's come by here a couple times. We've rated them a couple times. They have a couple prayer requests, some that have been doing well. So, for example, they have a charity project that they were doing with their daughter, where they were presenting to a lot of local business owners in hopes of funding. I heard that that went very well a couple weeks ago. So, big praise that their charity project went well. And also a prayer request for their 15-year-old son. He had knee surgery for ACL reconstruction a couple months ago. Praise that he's been doing a lot better, but he hasn't been able to play sports or anything during this season and all that stuff. So pray for continued healing for him, even though things have been going very well. Um, Another praise that I want to address that was very recent. We were praying for the Lavender Snorlax, another friend of mine from undergrad. She was asking for prayer so that she could do her teaching placement. She was going to school to be a teacher, and part of that, to get her teaching license, she had to do a teaching placement. And she wasn't able to afford to get a car or to get her driver's license in order to get to that teaching placement. We were praying for that for a while, and we didn't hear anything back from it for a little bit. But we have a big praise that we got a couple weeks ago, that being that she was able to do the teaching placement. And she had a big praise that she was telling us all about, that it went very well. And she was very happy that we were praying for her and that everything worked out. So another big praise for her and that that all worked out. We have a prayer request for Todd Gray and for his friends. He had a couple of his friends, names were Tartsa and Simeon. They both had relatives in attendance at the Oklahoma State Fair where there was just an active shooter a couple months ago. I haven't had any updates on that situation, but we want to keep praying for them and their families and everything that happened there, if there's any trauma or anything like that. A prayer request for Thomas, both for his mom and also for his grandma. Prayer request for both of them because both of them have been dealing with medical conditions. His mom's been dealing with pretty bad breathing problems, and his grandma has been dealing with some memory loss and cardiac issues. So prayer for Thomas's family during this time. Next, a lot of answered prayer requests. A prayer for Emma. So Emma is another streamer we've rated a couple times. She has a very kind heart, but we want prayer for her right now. I'll just read off her prayer request. She says she could use prayer for her battle against cancer. She's had Hodgkin's lymphoma for quite a few years, and it's affecting her ability to breathe at times. She's asking for prayer for wisdom on how to fight it, and that she'll begin to improve. So we want prayer for that. And yes, Zev, we've rated. That's how we found Emma the first time. So I didn't know you didn't know that actually. Yeah, so the first time we met Emma and her sister was because we rated them. They were playing some games and we saw that they had the Christian tag, so we rated them and they were super kind. That's how we met them. So Emma streams as well. Very kind heart. But yeah, she wants prayer as well for cancer and everything that's going on there. A prayer request from Leo. Leo is asking for prayers that he can do well in school coming up, and also for prayer for his brother who just had surgery so that he might heal. Also, a prayer request for I forgot about this one. Prayer request for the toxic family as well. Another one from them. I haven't gotten an update on this one. I think things are well, last I heard, but I haven't heard directly. They had put in a prayer request back in November that they had an eviction notice from their house. I think things worked out from what I understood, but continued prayer for them if that wasn't worked out. I'm not 100% sure. Um, Prayer for Two Jug. We don't know too much about them, but they came by our stream a couple weeks ago, and they just asked for prayer for an unspoken prayer request, and we haven't seen them since to get an update. But please be praying for them. Prayer for Zev's roommate, who's fallen pretty far behind on rent due to losing their job. He also might have an eviction notice coming up. Zev, I don't know if you have any updates on that one. We had that one come in right before the Christmas season. I don't know if you have an update on that one or not. But prayer for Zev's roommate, potentially. And also a prayer request for Lavender Snorlax again. This one also came in right before Christmas, so we haven't gone over this one yet, but she is asking for prayer for some job interviews. Says specifically in the Discord for a job interview, but I know she's done a couple more last I heard. So prayer for her right now as she goes through these job interviews and tries to find a new job. Zev. Oh, he did get the eviction notice and he has a court date, but he has a job, and they said as long as he shows attempts at payment, he'll be fine. Okay, well, that's good. So, continued prayer for Zev's friend, but also praise that it seems to be going well for the time being. um, Also, I forgot to mention this, but if you guys have any prayer requests, feel free to put them in the chat now or in the Discord, so we can be praying for them. So if you have anything that's not already on our prayer list, feel free to put it in the chat now so we can be praying for it. Sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier. And a prayer for Samuel Soros. He's asking for prayer for his brother. I'll just read off his prayer request. He is away from everything, church, God, and he has already said that he does not believe in Jesus, so my request is that you pray for him. So we're asking for prayer for Samuel Soros and his brother. Prayer request for Kodo. Kodo's asking for prayer for wisdom, that the Holy Spirit will guide his words as he's talking to a friend of his about becoming a Christian. We've been praying for that one as well, so prayer for him that he might speak well to his friend. And finally, a prayer request. I'm not sure if this one's answered or not. This one was right before Christmas, before the last time we streamed. Prayer for Grace, another streamer, and her husband. They just tested positive for the flu. I'm assuming that's over, but prayer anyways for that. And Zev, I pray that Dietrich responds to my chat on Minecraft. So I see you guys have been playing Minecraft without me while we've been doing Bible study. I'm not complaining as long as you're here to hear the word of God. She canceled stream last night. She's still sick. Okay, so continue to pray for Grace and her husband then. Wow, that's long. It's been a couple weeks. I'm surprised they're still sick. Definitely still prayer for them then if it's still going on. But yeah, so that's all our prayer requests. If you guys don't have anything to add to the prayer list, then I will go forward to God in prayer. So if you'll join me real quick. Father in heaven, thank you so much for tonight. Thank you so much for being able to join together for this Bible study. Thank you for meeting us here in this conversation, for speaking through me and for speaking through everyone else here, I hope. I pray that this is a place where your kingdom was furthered on this earth. And I pray that as we go back out into the world after this Bible study, into our school, into our work, wherever it is that we're going, that we would remember to put you first in everything that we do, and that we would remember to pursue your calling on our lives, and that we might do our work to the best of our ability to that which is glorifying unto you. We pray that we would take these words to heart, that we would ponder them, that we would remember them, that we would apply these things to our lives. I pray that we would not forget what it is that you have done for us, as the Israelites did, as Pharaoh did, as the Egyptians did. I pray that we would always remember the things that it is that you do for us, whether they're miraculous, like the 10 plagues in the Red Sea, or they're little blessings that you have given to us. I pray that we would remember the small blessings, that we would remember the big things that you have done for us, that you have saved us from our captivity to sin. I pray that we would remember these things as we go forward in our lives, and I pray that we would do so as the application from our study this week. Pray for all of the things that have been lifted up to us in this community, in our Discord, in this Twitch community. I pray that you will be meeting each of these people in their unique situations, helping them in the unique ways that they need help. and I pray that we might be able to join back again here sometime, and you will have a great time. Pray all of these things in your name. Amen. All right, so first of all, I want to thank you guys for coming. As I said, if you want to join in the Discord, I'll put that again in here so that you can continue to get to know us a little bit better. We'd love to have you there. We'd love to get to know you a little bit better if you come by here tonight. If you want to come back again, like I said, Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for games. Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for some Bible study. Zev found a zombie with chainmail for me, and as you guys can see, people are playing on our Minecraft server right now. So these games that we have set up, the Clash Royale and the Minecraft, these are some ways that we can get to know you a little bit better, that we can fellowship with you by playing a game, even though we're long distance all across the world. We want this to be a community that not just gathers together every once in a while to talk about God's word, but that truly wants to get to know each other, that wants to better ourselves, that wants to better the world, that wants to fellowship together and have a good time. So if you want to join us in doing so, there's a couple ways that you can do so, as we've talked about. We'd love to have you in those and get to know you a little bit better, be praying for you, and to be able to help you out. There's people on Minecraft right now if you want to join them. But if you guys don't know, we end our streams by rating another Christian streamer. So I'll swap over here real quick. So here's how we do it. We go on Twitch, we search the Christian tag, and we sort low to high. And essentially, we're going to search for a channel, something in their title. Oh gosh, what is this? Reacting Jordan Peterson on Chris Williamson. That's interesting. Wednesday Reset. New Year, New Mage. So we're going to find somebody with the Christian tag. We're going to raid them. And what we're going to do when we get into their chat, we're going to spam in their chat, God loves you. And essentially, this is a way that we can end our night by putting a smile on somebody's face. We can end our night by really, truly blessing someone else in their community. Every time we do it, we get a good reaction. Everybody gets a good smile. And here we go. Here's a good one. Let's go check them out. Potentially, it's a good one. Hayate Tsuti, I think is how you say it. God bless everyone playing with the gang, playing Lethal Company. English, Christian gamer. Hello, I'm Hayate. Nice to meet you. I'm a VTuber EN who just loves to play games and hang out with people. If you were brought here, I hope you enjoy the stay and enjoy the content. About me, I'm a Christian follower of Jesus Christ, 25 years old, your friendly neighborhood butler at your service, always down to make friends or help people in need when it comes to emotions or some advice. That's a great start. So I think we're definitely going to do them. So I'm going to copy their name. And like I said, whenever we get in this person's chat, remember we're going to spam in their chat, God loves you, put a smile on their face, bless their night. That's how we do it around here. But before I send you guys, I'm going to start the raid. Thank you guys so much for coming tonight. You guys have really blessed my night by wanting to be here and talk about God's word with me and get to know God a little bit better and to better ourselves. I'm glad that you guys joined me tonight. I hope that your nights have been blessed as much as mine has tonight. I hope that I'll see you again sometime as we come back to talk about God's word or just have a good time. Also, shout out before we leave. I'm going to announce it in the Discord tomorrow, but there is a big video being posted tomorrow on YouTube. I know that I don't always do YouTube videos all the time, but this is a big one, a gift to you guys, and I hope that you guys really like it. For those of you who are here right now and who stayed the whole time, I'll give you the gift of knowing what it is since you stuck it out the whole time. It is a God'sGamers 2023 highlights video. So it's the whole journey from our very first stream up until our last Christmas stream of the year. I hope that you guys like it. I spent a lot of time on it. It's going to post tomorrow around noon. I'm going to announce it in the Discord whenever it does go live, and I'd love to have you guys there for it. And I hope you guys like it. Yeah. So thank you guys for coming, blessing my night. Go spam in the chat. God loves you. Yes, I will be streaming a new game next week. Sorry, I don't have more time. The raid's starting, but we will play it next week.